Hi, friends. We've been learning about plants. And plants come from so many different places, right? We have trees that are plants, and they grow in things in gardens called arbors or orchards. And we have vegetable gardens that grow vegetables and fruit gardens that grow fruit. We have gardens that just grow nothing but beautiful flowers. Well, I have a story about a garden in the city. So let's find out how this family started this beautiful garden. The garden in the city. Ben and Caroline jumped out of the moving van to look at their new home. It was an old house with a huge yard. I love it, said Caroline, especially the big yard. Look how overgrown it is, said Ben. Not for long, Dad said. You two have always wanted a garden. Here's your chance to have one, right in the middle of the city. Spring is the perfect time to start working on it. As soon as they were settled in the house, the family sat down to draw up a plan for the yard. I'd like a big lawn and a flower bed, said Mom. I want a garden of my own, said Ben. Me too, said Caroline. I want to grow lots of vegetables. So they made a drawing of what they were going to do in their garden. So here's their house and their patio, and they're going to grow some lavender and roses. Ben will have a garden, and so will Caroline. Then we'll have some nice flower beds and an apple tree and a compost heap, as well as some beautiful trees. Caroline planned her own garden. She wants to grow vegetables. So she's planning on carrots and potatoes, radishes and lettuce and tomatoes. Are they a fruit or are they a vegetable? Ben wants to plant flowers and maybe a tree. The next morning they began to work. Mom went out to buy gardening tools. Caroline, Ben, and Dad picked up trash that had been left in the yard. Look at this, said Ben. Someone lost a sock. When the yard was clean, Dad started to turn over the soil. Ben pulled up weeds. Try to get the roots, said Dad, so the weeds won't grow back again. Caroline sprinkled fertilizer on the soil so their plants will grow well. The first big project was the lawn. Dad sowed the grass seed, sprinkled it evenly. Then he raked dirt over the seed and used a roller to bury the seeds and make the earth firm and flat. Over the next few weeks, Caroline and Ben helped water the area. They chased the birds away to keep them from eating all the seed. Before long, the grass had grown tall enough for Dad to mow it. The old apple tree in the yard didn't look very healthy, so one day Mom called the tree doctor. First the tree doctor sawed off some old dying branches. Now, the newer branches will grow stronger, she told the children. Then she pulled back a piece of bark and showed them that ladybugs were living underneath it. She removed the ladybugs and dug out a section of the tree trunk that had rotted. Then she filled the hole in the trunk with a special cement. That's to keep water out, she said. Soon your tree will be nice and healthy again. Next, it was time for Ben and Caroline to start working on their gardens. Some of their friends came to help and to play in the big yard. Aunt Lisa came to visit too. She brought plants and a little tree for Ben's flower garden and seed potatoes for Caroline's vegetable patch. Put some markers in the ground, Aunt Lisa suggested as Caroline buried the potatoes in the earth. Then you'll know where the potatoes are planted. Ooh, the apple tree really is looking nice and healthy. Caroline and Ben went to the gardening center to buy seeds. I can't decide which flowers I want to grow, said Ben. Does your garden get much sun? Asked the salesman. Yes, lots of it, said Ben. Then try marigolds, said the salesman. Poppies and cosmos like the sun too. What kind of vegetables should I grow? Asked Caroline. Radishes, carrots, lettuce, and beans would be all a good start, said the salesman. When Caroline and Ben got home, they opened the packet to look at the seeds. I wonder how we should plant them, said Caroline. What does it say on the back of the package? Give it to me and I'll read it, Ben said, spilling the package of lettuce seeds out of Caroline's hand. You're spilling them, she yelled, and they started to fight. Hey, you two, a voice called out suddenly. Come up here and let me show you my plants. They looked up and saw a boy on the balcony of the house next door. I'm Luke Miller, he called. Go right around the corner to number 10, second floor, and bring your seeds. I'll show you how to plant them. Okay, yelled Caroline and Ben, forgetting about their fight. When they got upstairs, Caroline and Ben found that Luke liked to grow things. He had many different plants on his balcony, tulips and daffodils and hydrangeas. He had just planted some marigolds. Planting seeds in containers is like having a miniature garden, Luke explained. What's growing in the window box? Asked Caroline. That's called cress, said Luke. It's easy to grow and it tastes good. Try it. Later that day, Aunt Lisa came to visit. Your gardens are really coming along, she said. That's because we have a new partner, said Ben. See? He pointed up at the balcony next door where Luke was waving at them. Special delivery, Luke called as he lowered a basket. Inside it were seeds, 2 tulips, and a gardening book. What a team, said Aunt Lisa. I could use you 3 in my garden. For Caroline, the most exciting day of the summer was the first time she pulled up radishes and found that they were ready to be eaten. We'll make a salad with them for lunch, said Mom. Later in the afternoon, Caroline took some of the salad next door to Luke. I love it, Luke told Caroline as he munched away. Now remember, thin your row of carrots so the ones that are left can grow big. Then we can eat carrots soon too. Caroline looked through Luke's binoculars into the garden below. Have you seen all the birds in the apple tree? She exclaimed. They're babies, said Luke, only a few weeks old. Their nest is in the hole in the tree trunk. The young birds hopped and fluttered around, peeping loudly. They're waiting for their parents to bring them food, explained Luke. There are lots of insects around in the summer, and the birds eat them. Then the insects can't harm your garden. Ben felt very proud of his garden. He was planting some impatient seedlings that Luke had given him. The poppies and marigolds flowered first, then cosmos. Ben pulled off the dead blossoms so they wouldn't go to seed. That way the plants would keep flowering. Bees and butterflies were attracted by the bright colors of the garden. Caroline's bean plants had grown so tall that she had to tie them to stakes. Their gardens were keeping the children busy. Sometimes Mom helped them, but she was too busy weeding and tending her flowers. Caroline and Ben went next door almost every day to visit Luke. They loved to talk about plants with him and to look at birds through his binoculars. There were so many different ones, finches and sparrows, blackbirds and pigeons. Luke knew the names of most of the birds and taught his friends how to tell them apart. By the middle of the summer, Ben and Caroline's yard was green and beautiful and full of living things. One hot afternoon, the children had a party underneath the apple tree. Their friend Katie showed them how to make crowns out of the leaves. Ben made fruit drinks for everybody, and Dad gave them a big bowl of cherries to eat. I'm going to plant one of the pits in my garden, Ben said. Maybe someday we can have cherries of our very own. During the hot days of summer, the yard needed a lot of water. Luke liked being in charge of the hose. Give everything a good soaking, said Mom. Luke laughed. He didn't need to be told twice. Look what I found under the apple tree today, Dad said one evening. It was an old tarnished coin. Someone lost this many years ago. Do you think the apple tree was here when the coin was lost? Asked Caroline. I don't know, said Dad. It's too bad trees can't talk, said Ben. I'm sure they can tell us some interesting things. That night, Ben woke up and couldn't fall asleep again. He went to the window and breathed in the sweet night air. Moths, drawn to the light in his room, flew around as he looked out. Then he took his blanket and tiptoed downstairs. The leaves rustled in the breeze as Ben lay down under the apple tree and closed his eyes. Soon he was asleep. He dreamed that the tree was whispering to him. Do you want to hear my story? It said. I was planted in this yard many years ago. The house was new then, and the city was smaller. It was much more peaceful, too. People rode in horse drawn carriages and then in old fashioned cars. They used manure to fertilize the trees and other plants. I've seen many people pass through this yard. For a long while, the house stood empty. There was no one to tend the gardens and pick my apples. But now you're here. It sighed a contented sigh. The next morning at breakfast, Ben told his family what their home had been long ago. Caroline was sure that he was making it up. Near the end of the summer, Ben and Caroline's family went away to the beach for a month. The children loved going to the beach, but they were sad to leave their gardens. Don't worry, said Luke. I'll write to you and tell you what I see through my binoculars. When they returned, the children were happy to see Luke. They brought him a sea urchin, a starfish, and some seaweed. But Ben was upset when he saw his garden. The flowers were buried in weeds and had become tall and spindly. First, Ben weeded. Then he cut his plants back so they could branch out strongly and blossom again. He gave the wilting, thirsty plants some water. Caroline's lettuce had gone to seed and become too tough to eat, but the potatoes had flourished in the heat. Hey, Luke, Caroline shouted up at the balcony. Tomorrow I'm going to make French fries from my potatoes. When fall came, the apples on the tree turned red and the children picked and ate them. Soon after, the trees began to drop their leaves. Caroline and Ben decided to have a party in the yard. They carefully built a fire and roasted chestnuts. They gave their guests berries, hazelnuts, and apples to eat. Afterwards, they made necklaces and toys out of the nuts and beans. Soon it will be winter and everything will be buried under snow, said Ben sadly. Don't be sad, said Luke. We'll get our gardens ready for winter, and before you know it, spring will be back. Then we'll have the fun of growing things again. The whole family built a bird feeder so that when the cold weather came, their feathered friends would not go hungry. In the corner of the yard, Dad heaped all the old leaves and dead flowers into a compost pile. Next spring, he said, we'll use the compost to fertilize our gardens. Ben pulled the last Ben pulled the last dying plant from his garden. Then he planted some bulbs deep in the earth. Protected from the frost, they could put down roots. Then I'll have a new kind of flower in the spring, said Ben. Tulips, hyacinths. Mom cut some of her everlasting flowers, tied them together, and hung them up to dry. They will brighten up the house during the winter, she said. The children thought the lavender smelt wonderful. Once their gardens were ready for winter, Caroline and Ben had time to go to the country with Aunt Lisa. All three of them looked for pretty leaves to collect. When we get home, I'll help you press them between pieces of wax paper with an iron, promised Aunt Lisa. That way they won't fade or crumble. Caroline and Ben also made bows and arrows from fallen branches. The children pretended they were hunting wild turkeys in a time long ago. It seemed to rain for days and days that fall. I hate this weather, said Caroline. She was sad because that morning she had found a dead goldfinch in the yard. Dad said it had probably gotten hurt somehow and was too weak to fly south for the winter. The lawn was so wet that little mushrooms sprang up all over it. At least there are some things still alive and growing, said Caroline. But I wish it would stop raining and start snowing. It wasn't long before Caroline got her wish. Snow covered the ground and trees, and birds began to flock to the feeder in the yard. With all the fun of identifying bird tracks, making snowmen, and throwing snowballs, the children didn't miss their gardens too much. Besides, at this time of year, we have lots of green things inside, said Ben. Mistletoe and poinsettia and holly, and the Christmas tree, said Caroline. What kind of presents are you hoping to find underneath it, asked Aunt Lisa. I want some new overalls for gardening with plenty of pockets for seeds and tools and things, said Caroline. And I'd like a book about how to grow fruits like strawberries and watermelons, said Ben. Now that we know so much about growing things, we can try new plants. Next year, we can make our gardens even bigger and better. I'm sure you will, said Aunt Lisa. And they did. Wow, that was a beautiful garden. And I'm so happy that they're talking about making their garden even bigger and better next year. Even if you don't have room even if you don't have a backyard where you can grow big gardens like the family did in our story, you can still grow gardens just like their friend did, Luke, in containers on a balcony or on a windowsill. See, look, this didn't take up too much room and he didn't need a big backyard to do it, and he still had beautiful flowers and some veggies to eat. Here at my house, we have a small area where we can plant some flowers. But if we want to plant something like herbs or vegetables, we would have to do that inside of pots, just like they did on the balcony in our story. Maybe you can grow a small garden of your own, either outside or inside, and take care of it. Who knows? Maybe you'll end up with some beautiful plants or some fresh vegetables to eat. Whatever you decide to do, I hope you have fun and that you liked our story, The Garden in the City.